So next we have Renata Blair, who is the head of Māori sector and relationships at the Bank of New Zealand. And he will be talking about the Māori economy and iwi investment, which I believe, iwi have been doing something similar to sustainable investments for much longer than we have been learning about it. And I think one of the things Renata will talk about is how a strong and sustainable Māori economy will accelerate growth and prosperity of Aotearoa. Thank you, Renata. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Just wondering if you can hear me, Sebastian.
Yes, perfect.
Ka pai. Tēnā koutou katoa. E ngā iwi ko tae mai nei. Koutou, te whare wānanga o tākou. Kia koe hoki e Craig Stobo, te kia mana tēnei mininga. He mihi hoki kia ngai tahu te iwi kāinga, te mana whenua o tākou ka nui te mihi. So, greetings everybody. Yes, my name is Renata Blair. I'm the General Manager of Māori Business, Māori Sector at BNZ. I am from Ngāti Whātua, and I'm going to attempt to cram a few centuries of history into my presentation, and then provide some insights into how we can do business into the modern Māori economy, some advice on how to invest in the modern Māori economy. So excuse me as I rush through about 200 years of New Zealand history in a short time period. Sebastian, could you see that first screen of the ocean there?
Yeah, that's great. Could you just put that into presentation mode?
Okay, yes, will do. How's that?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so I want to take your minds back to a time and plot a future, and we're also going to plot a future, as we must look back into history in order to advance. It's a strong belief of mine. And so I want to take you back where Māori had reign over their mountains, and their oceans and their rivers. Their forests were resplendent with giant kauri tree at every turn, and there was an abundance of birdsong. The ocean was full of sea life, and this was Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. Māori, our first inhabitants, a nation of explorers and great adventurers, established a life of tribalism, of whānau, hapu and iwi, where there was relatively undisturbed possession of their lands, oceans and rivers, and they lived in community and within their tribal boundaries. And then imagine disruption, a new way of life, and everything that comes with it. Agreements, disagreements, warfare, battles, imprisonment. And with this disruption also came new technology, development, the modern world, parliaments and governments. Also things like the new infection of diseases like influenza, and basically a systematic breakdown of your traditional society and structures, integration, assimilation, a change in your traditional identity and culture. Your traditional possessions either confiscated or sold off, and then to where this graphic of Māori land ownership from 1840 till today. You can see that bit by bit, Māori became a minority landholder within their own country. Fast forward to the 60s and 70s, time of Māori rights, protest movements, distrust in government, anger, grievance, frustration, the loss of language, the loss of all possessions. These protest movements led to the creation also of a Treaty of Waitangi, a Waitangi Tribunal to respond to Treaty of Waitangi grievances, the return of lands, cash compensation, public apologies. And it becomes a time of healing, it becomes a time of addressing the past and moving on into the future, as we must look back in order to go forward. The future determined, resolute, and proud. And with this background in mind, we can all lean into this Māori sector to understand the history, and then the hope is to invest and move forward into the Māori economy. So I'll attempt to paint a picture of the current Māori economy, provide some ideas as to how we're navigating with Māori at BNZ, and outline some key ways in how we can collectively work together to uplift the Māori economy to make it a more inclusive New Zealand society. So this slide here is based on research conducted by Beryl on behalf of the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, and has yielded some interesting facts. Some of the standout facts are that the Māori economy in 2018 was around circa $70 billion worth of assets and delivers nearly 7% of New Zealand GDP overall. It's a young population. The Māori population, 70% under the age of 40, and are projected to increase by a staggering 20% by year 2030. The asset growth is about 5 to 6% growth, and compared to 2 to 3% for the rest of New Zealand, it is something that we all need to sit up and take notice of. Māori own 50% of all commercial fishing, 30% of sheep, beef and lamb farming, and 10% of all milk production. And interestingly, there's still a lot of Māori land that is currently undeveloped. Settlement assets by government have only totaled $2 billion over the past 20 years, which is really insignificant to what was lost. But importantly, it has grown to $10 billion. So these are important characteristics. The Māori people, they care about people, planet, and then profit, and probably in that order. So when we're engaging with Māori, what are their characteristics, and what should you expect when engaging with iwi and other Māori entities? What is the opportunity? Can we see into the future? So Māori, what do they look like? Some of the key characteristics are they have very long-term horizons. When I engage with iwi, it's often a 50 to 150 year horizon. They're stabling their assets for future generations. They don't see their current generation as the one that is going to solve all commercial, financial, economic, environmental issues at this point in time. They're looking to the future. So your investment may be a year 2 of their 100-year plan, or it could be year 20 of their 100-year plan. And they're prioritizing their future generations over their individual gains. In sustainability, they're wanting to build businesses that care for the planet. Specifically, they view themselves as kaitiaki of the earth. Māori see oceans, mountains, rivers, and forests as their ancestors. Without them, they would cease to exist. Māori, another key characteristic, it's about he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. That is one of the greatest Māori whakatauki about what is the most important things of the world. It's about people whom they care for deeply, the survival of their culture and their identity. Their organizational structures are very sophisticated, often with an elected board, a subsidiary commercial board, and a social entity underneath, which delivers things like education and health and te reo and culture. So they also usually have a board of advisors, of elders, which I think other entities could take on board, where these elders provide wisdom to the generation of the boards that are running these commercial entities and these social enterprises. Another key point is iwi are very conservative. As my presentation showed, they've only recently acquired these assets, and so it's hard to let go. They have constraints to sell certain assets because these are assets that are their ancestral rights to these lands. They are part of who they are. It is their identity. You often hear the river is me, I am the river. Or that mountain is my ancestor. It's not a a thing over there. It's their relationship they have with their lands, their oceans, their rivers, and their mountains. They cannot turn away from that. They only had these assets returned, so they're reacquainting themselves after 150 years without ownership. So it's going to be difficult for them to ever let them go. And that is a good thing for New Zealand. That is something which we must respect, that we do respect, and something that is good for our country. So what about BNZ? We look at this slide, and there's over 70 iwi within Aotearoa. So this slide shows from the tip of the tail of the fish to the back of the waka of Maui of the South Island. There's over 70 iwi, and within those 70 iwi, you have subgroups, sub-iwi, that are also within that tribal district. Ngaitahu now, as you can see, is an asset value of $1.9 billion. Waikato Tainui are there at around 1.5 billion, along with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei. So these are heavy assets, and many of them are structured, diversified across Aotearoa. So many tribes are set in the primary sector, others are in the commercial property. Many have a combination of managed funds, tourism operations, health, schools. So they have this wide variety of a very robust and strong economy across that Māori sector. So at BNZ, we have an ambition to be the bank for Aotearoa, the bank for New Zealand. We want to be the bank for Māori, and we have a One BNZ Māori strategy, and core to this are three foundations. The first one is around whanaungatanga. How do we connect? Before we even talk about money, before we even talk about deals, we want to talk about relationships. We speak about earning the right to do business with you, earning that right to do business with the iwi. We have a strong Māori strategy to serve our customers with excellence and provide them with banking professionals who are excellent at their jobs, who are considered leaders within certain sectors of forestry, fishing, farming, those sectors that are in commercial property, sectors building residential developments. So what we're trying to do is provide this excellence to Māori. The other thing we're trying to do is we're trying to seek, hire and retain our Māori staff. We need specialists that can deliver. And I suggest that in your business, it would be really important that you also seek out Māori staff that can deliver for you within your business. Take your time as well doing business. Slow is fast in these relationships. Iwi have only just had their assets returned, and they've gone through a long and arduous and a grievance period of almost 200 years. They have a lack of trust in the system, and so they will be conservative in what they do. The other key point is we're genuine in our engagement. We want to understand that every iwi is different. When I travel the country and I cross tribal boundaries, I almost move into a new country. When I travel to Rotorua, I go to Te Arawa. When I travel to Hamilton, I travel to Tainui. And when I travel to the great mighty waka a Maui Te Waipounamu, I travel to Ngaitahu. So these are key things to understand when you're dealing and managing and working with Māori. They each have their own mana. Not iwi are all the same. So be genuine in your engagement, and they are our country's life partners. The iwi of Ngaitahu will never ever cease to exist. They will always remain a key part of Aotearoa. The iwi of Ngāti Whātua never cease to exist. They will stay in Aotearoa. And they should be your life partners too. It's important to show up, not just for a half-yearly annual result. We need to show up consistently at their homes, at the marae, in their businesses, at times where they need advice. You are there as experts to give it. And uplift everybody in your organisation. It's not just my responsibility as the head of Māori, the GM of Māori of BNZ, in order to uplift the Māori economy. It's everybody's responsibility to be bilingual, to pronounce our Te reo Māori, to learn te reo Māori, such a beautiful, eloquent language. So it's up to everybody across your organization to lead in te reo Māori and tikanga Māori, Māori protocols. The second foundation is manaakitanga. How do we provide products and solutions where Māori can accelerate their assets, accelerate returns, accelerate profits, provide them with banking products that aren't just your run-of-the-mill banking products or services, provide customized solutions that will help them get to where they need to be. Look after them. Remember that it's for the long-term view. Ensure that their investments are commercial as well as sustainable, as we know that Māori are concerned about people, planet, and profit. So show up with products and solutions that are wanting to solve a problem for Māori. As we know, many of the Māori land holdings aren't able to be securitized in a commercial sense. So we need to understand what that means as we offer products and solutions for our iwi clients. The final foundation is whairawa. Via those relationships of whanaungatanga and manaakitanga, we're seeing an uplift in business in whairawa. Māori are loyal, fiercely loyal. You become part of their whānau. Once you've established those relationships, it's your job to keep them. Is that trust, after centuries of distrust, if you gain that trust, then Māori tend to stay with you, and you need to be there for them through the thick and the thin. Also, you might start off with a small investment, but what we've tended to see is that grows quickly via that trust. Things open, things start to accelerate quickly, and you need to be ready in order to respond to Māori investment. It's important to note, finally, before I take any questions, that when you invest with Māori, you're investing in the small towns, those small communities, those large cities and regions of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Their profits go back into their communities. They often have education scholarships, their own schools, sports clubs. They distribute food to their people, especially during times of COVID. They're paying for doctors' fees, prescriptions, elderly care. They invest heavily into their culture to ensure their language and customs are never at threat again. They invest in community buildings. They're buying shops. They're purchasing commercial buildings in those small towns to build their small, medium enterprises within them. They invest in medicines, healthcare, health insurance, their whānau and community well-being. And you can be a part of it for a long time. You will be investing not into a commercial entity, you will be investing in people and communities and towns and cities across Aotearoa. So e tātou mā, koina taku kōrero, everybody, that is my presentation today, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Renata. Very insightful. So if anyone has any questions, please pop them into the Q&A. Is there any questions from the room? No? Great. I was wondering, actually, you know, as I'm thinking about impact throughout this session and co-investments and the sort of capital that's available for impactful investments and almost sort of a feeling of lack for projects to invest in, I was wondering if there's opportunities for maybe trusts or other types of impact investors to co-develop or co-invest in projects in the Māori economy that would be impactful but still provide somewhat of a financial return.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's perfect for companies that do have a strong ESG strategy. They're inclined to be, I'd say, a partner for Māori that are looking for things like commercial building development. There's progress that's being made with various iwi that are building commercial buildings such as hotels and large-scale hotels. These are $100 to $200 million hotels or commercial buildings that are up above $500 million. So Māori are seeking a return financially, but they also want to ensure that they partner with people that we've heard today, different organisations that do have a strong ESG. On another point there, Sebastian, I talk about culture as part of ESG. It should be the ESGC, where culture is a key part of those strategies, and specifically for Māori. So yeah, there'd be Māori are open for business, for doing partnerships on different projects. Even when the primary sector, they're open to having investment within their particular businesses around fishing, farming, forestry, and the like. So I think the important thing is that you have to come prepared when you walk into their domain, that you have done your homework, you've done your research, and that you know what their key drivers are.
Great, that's insightful. I think we are still, as most of the day, running behind a little bit.
Oh.
So, and there's no more questions have come up, so we may move on to the next. One's just come up. We'll quickly go. Oh, kia ora Renata, he ko whakaaro he mana tangata. Maybe you could translate that. I'm guessing it's a thank you of some kind.
Oh, I think they're saying I'm a beautiful man and I'm very handsome. That's giving compliments there, but yeah, I just encourage everybody, to really have a Māori strategy, and the relationship that you have with them it goes beyond any balance sheet. So I love what I do. There's lots of young people out there that are willing to get involved in your businesses. So open the doors and bring them in.
Kia ora.